What's happening in Minneapolis right now is being called the largest immigration enforcement operation in American history. And the legacy media is doing everything they can to hide it from you. Over 2,000 federal agents have descended on one city, arresting over 1,000 people, while the media's attempt at turning Renee Good into a left-wing martyr is collapsing. And now a Somali politician has just been arrested and forced to resign from office. And it's all just the beginning. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to hear anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. If left-wing agitators thought that they had intimidated ICE agents in the Trump administration to leave Minneapolis, they are in for one rude awakening. Over 2,000 federal agents are now officially on the ground in the Twin Cities. It's being touted as the largest immigration operation ever conducted on American soil. Homeland Security is going door to door investigating fraud. ICE is arresting dangerous criminals with deportation orders who've been living freely in sanctuary cities for decades. We're talking about murderers, rapists, pedophiles, the worst of the worst, finally being brought to justice. Minneapolis has become ground zero for what President Trump has called a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. Remember Feeding Our Future? That $250 million COVID relief fraud scheme? Federal prosecutors have thus far charged 78 people, 90% of which have ties to Minnesota's Somali community, for stealing taxpayer money meant to feed hungry children. Reports now show that Somali couriers moved nearly $700 million in cash through Minneapolis airport in just 2 years. And the kicker is that some of that money allegedly funded al-Shabaab terrorists in Somalia who have ties to al-Qaeda. But none of that stopped the ultra-repulsive Ilhan Omar from going on CBS's Deface the Nation and lie to their rapidly dwindling audience.
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people from being able to exercise their regular, normal activities that they would. There is no justification in any of the things that they say. The 87 people that you've described as being investigated, many of them adjudicated, all happened under the Biden administration. There is no justification for this search. We know that ICE has the ability to conduct raids. There is no reason to have over 2,000 people coming in to our city and creating the level of terror that they have created.
Well, Ilhan Omar is right about one thing. These raids are supposed to incite fear. Criminals should be afraid. Lawbreakers should be terrified. The day that felons and fugitives become emboldened, courageous, at ease with their daily lives is the day Minneapolis officially becomes Mogadishu. It officially becomes a failed state. And that's precisely what woke progressives like Ilhan Omar deliberately trying to achieve. They want to burn down what they believe to be an inherently racist, bigoted system and replace it with a post-American society fashioned after their own cultural Marxist image. But unfortunately for Ilhan Omar and her ilk, the Trump administration is dropping the hammer in Minneapolis, especially after the shooting of Renee Good, not despite it. As more and more video evidence comes in, it's becoming increasingly clear that what Renee Good attempted to do to ICE agent Jonathan Ross was the very definition of domestic terrorism, something that Border Czar Tom Homan had to school Meet the Depressed's Kristen Welker.
I want to stay on this question, which is about the way in which the woman who was shot and killed is being labeled as a domestic terrorist. Just to be clear, is anyone who protests ICE a domestic terrorist in the eyes of the administration? I can't say that. It's a case-by-case basis. But, if you look up the definition of terrorism, is there violence? Is there threat of violence based on an ideology that wants to change the way the government does what we do?
Look up the definition of terrorism.
But was Secretary Noem correct to label her a domestic terrorist, Mr. Homan?
Look, we don't know what, I don't know what Secretary Noem knows and what I know. I can tell you is what they did is illegal. And if you look up this definition of terrorism, it certainly could fall within that definition if you look at the definition of terrorism.
But you don't have evidence.
Pardon me?
You don't have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist.
I don't know what Secretary has that I don't. I'm not going to judge what the Secretary says, but if you look up the definition of terrorism, it certainly can fall within that. But I think we all got to agree there was no reason for this lady to do what she did. There's no reason to be there. If you want to protest, protest, but don't actively impede and interfere, and certainly don't drive a 4,000-pound vehicle toward an office.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, if you don't want to get shot, here's something for you. Probably you don't want to drive your car in the direction of a federal agent. It's not hard. This isn't difficult. If you don't want to get shot, don't drive your vehicle in the direction of a federal agent. The fact that the legacy media is bending over backwards, literally doing cartwheels to try to justify this left-wing lunatic and demonize the ICE agent who justifiably shot her is all you need to know about the fact that the media pushes narrative, not news. The legacy media pushes progressive, realist narratives that are based on the radical ideology that the arc of history inevitably bends towards the left-wing vision of social justice. So left-wing agitators like Renee Good are by definition on the right side of history. They are by definition on the right side of justice, while ICE agents like Jonathan Ross are by definition on the wrong side of history, on the wrong side of justice. They're on the side of injustice. That's the radical progressive ideology that infests every single so-called news anchor at every single legacy media news outlet. But unfortunately for them, their ideological extremism is coming crashing down. Nobody buys it anymore. Even in these Democrat enclaves, the world is more and more turning against these left-wing lunatics. And if what just happened to a Somalian politician is any indicator, the downfall of the likes of Ilhan Omar has indeed truly begun. But first, bombshell revelations are ripping the mask off deep state corruption. Venezuela's ex-intelligence chief just exposed Maduro's narco-terror empire tied to China, Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah, and named corrupt U.S. politicians and officials who allegedly took millions to keep the regime alive. Those same dishonest forces are also sabotaging our financial system right here at home, draining your retirement savings to fund their globalist agenda. President Trump is leading the fight back, building a strategic Bitcoin reserve and opening retirement accounts to crypto. Follow his lead. Move your wealth into crypto assets like Block Trust IRA. Their Animus AI platform has outperformed Bitcoin by 250% since 2020, providing essential wealth defense against the deep state's thieving tentacles. Go to turleytalkscrypto.com right now and get a free $2,500 funding bonus when you open your account. That's turleytalkscrypto.com to secure your family's future today. A Somali city councilman in Lewiston, Maine, Iman Osman, has just been forced to resign after he was indicted on 2 felony counts for allegedly stealing firearms. And it gets even crazier. Osman, again, who's from Somalia, was already facing scrutiny for claiming to live at an address that was condemned and connected to a federal drug raid where agents seized 24 pounds of methamphetamine and cocaine and fentanyl and firearms. And when the city clerk asked him to verify his address, his lawyer said he couldn't disclose it because his life was in danger. He was getting death threats. But then when reporters checked with the Lewiston Police Department, they found that there was never any police report filed about any threats. So this Somali man won't even confirm where he lives, and yet he was actually sworn into office in the city council just 3 days ago. Well, what we're seeing here, honestly, in Minneapolis and in Maine, is a pattern of behavior that's been diagnosed by none other than the New York Times, and from none other than a Somali-born professor. Dr. Ahmed Samatar, a professor at Macalester College and leading expert in Somali studies, again, who is himself Somali American, is quoted in the New York Times making the claim that Somali refugees who arrived in the United States following their own country's civil war came from an environment, a cultural environment, where, quote, stealing from a dysfunctional and corrupt government is actually widespread. Christopher Rufo at the Manhattan Institute has also argued that many cultural patterns from Somalia, particularly clan networks, informal economies, the distrust and exploitation of state institutions, travel with these diaspora communities and have shown up in places like Minnesota as well. What's unfolding in Minneapolis represents far more than an immigration enforcement operation. It reveals America's own clash of civilizations, the inevitable consequence of importing millions upon millions of incompatible third world cultures into our country without requiring assimilation into American civilization. For decades, progressive elites dismissed the concept of civilization itself as racist or outdated, insisting that all cultures were equally compatible with liberal democracy. Minneapolis and Maine are now proving them catastrophically wrong. The Somali community here in the United States, numbering over 87,000 in Minnesota alone, has created what amounts to more or less a parallel civilization within our nation. And the fact that federal investigators uncovered hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud within that Somali community isn't the discovery of mere criminality. It's civilizational incompatibility manifesting as organized rejection of American legal and cultural norms. Representative Ilhan Omar epitomizes this post-American politics. Rather than defending the ICE agent who fired in self-defense after Renee Good accelerated her vehicle toward him, she went full tribalist. Omar immediately framed federal law enforcement as terrorizing her community. Her community. No, her community, not the American community, right? She doesn't view herself as defending America or distinctively American civilization from fraud and violence. She sees herself as defending her tribe. She's defending a Somali enclave against American intrusion. This is textbook civilizational conflict playing out on American soil. The patriotic backlash Trump represents isn't mere populism or nationalism. It's civilizational self-defense. It's an immune system. When Trump deploys 2,000 federal agents into Minneapolis, he's recognizing what progressive multiculturalists refuse to acknowledge. You cannot maintain civilization while importing millions who view your foundational institutions as oppressive impositions. 3 decades ago, Samuel Huntington warned that civilizations are defined by culture, religion, language, history, and institutions, and that conflicts between civilizations would define the post-Cold War era all the way throughout the 21st century. He was right about the global stage, but he didn't appear to foresee how mass immigration would bring these civilizational clashes inside Western nations themselves. Minneapolis isn't experiencing a crime wave or an integration challenge. It's experiencing what happens when incompatible civilizations occupy the same space, the same territory, without one clearly prevailing. The question facing America isn't whether this clash continues. It's already here. The question is whether American civilization possesses sufficient will to assert its primacy on its own soil, or whether progressive ideology has so weakened our civilizational confidence that we'll accommodate our own displacement in the name of diversity. If President Trump and the deployment of these 2,000 ICE agents have anything to say about it, the answer to that question is a simple one. America First is here to defeat America Last, and those efforts at civilizational restoration have just begun. Hey, before you go, I want to make sure you know about this. We're hosting a live event on Monday, January 26th, called A Vision for Christian Art and Cultural Renewal. It's an evening exploring how Christian artists and beauty renew communities and why raising the next generation with faith, family, and freedom is essential to our cultural future. RSVP today and get a free copy of my book, Beauty Matters. Monday, January 26th, 7 p.m., Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Limited seats. Link below. See you there.